300 years ago, the Mughal Empire commanded absolute authority over a vast stretch of the Indian subcontinent. Their court controlled immense wealth, collecting taxes from millions and maintaining a military force that dominated the region. That immense imperial power was centralized here. The Red Fort in Delhi stood as the ultimate physical symbol of their reign, a sprawling palace complex built to project permanence. But empires do not last forever, and the direct blood descendants of those emperors are alive today. They are not living in palaces. They are surviving in extreme poverty. Sultana Begum, the great-granddaughter-in-law of the last Mughal emperor, lives in a 66-square-foot hut. She shares a public street tap for washing and relies on a communal kitchen in a crowded slum in Howrah, Kolkata. Across India, politicians and historians frequently argue over the legacy of dead Mughal rulers, debating their impact and renaming streets that bear their names. Yet, the actual living heirs of that exact same lineage are completely ignored. How exactly does a royal dynasty go from ruling a subcontinent to surviving on a state pension of barely 6,000 rupees a month? This map shows the physical reality of their displacement. The bloodline was forced out of the imperial center in Delhi, pushed 1,500 kilometers away, and ultimately absorbed into the dense urban fabric of West Bengal. Sultana Begum lives the practical reality of this collapse every day. Her struggle intensified significantly in the 1980s, following the death of her husband, Prince Mirza Bedar Bukht. Left without a partner or meaningful state support, she spent the next several decades raising 6 children in those cramped conditions, stretching every rupee just to keep her family fed. When an empire collapses, it leaves behind monumental ruins for tourists to photograph, but it also leaves behind displaced people, quietly navigating the fallout generations later. To find the root of this displacement, we have to rewind to 1857 and look at Bahadur Shah Zafar. By the time he took the throne, he was a reluctant ruler, whose actual authority barely extended past the walls of Delhi. When the Indian Rebellion broke out, rebel forces arrived at his court and declared him the Emperor of India. The British East India Company responded with overwhelming military force, eventually crushing the rebellion entirely. The British forces breached the city, deliberately destroying large sections of the Mughal stronghold and dismantling their administrative control. The human toll on the royal family was immediate. British forces executed several of Zafar's sons, forcing any surviving heirs to scatter and go into deep hiding to escape violent retribution. Zafar himself was arrested. He was put on trial for treason, officially dethroned, and permanently exiled from India. He died in Rangoon, Burma, in 1862. His death marked the official termination of a 500-year imperial dynasty, permanently severing the surviving bloodline from any claim to power. Fast forward over a century to the 1980s, the hidden lineage of the last emperor had quietly survived, eventually tracing down to Prince Mirza Bedar Bukht, living in complete obscurity in Calcutta. His family's reality was no longer defined by court politics, but by the daily grind of navigating the dense, narrow streets of older West Bengal neighborhoods. They remained in the background until 2021, when Sultana Begum emerged from obscurity and filed a formal petition directly with the Supreme Court of India. She argued the British unjustly seized the Red Fort in 1857, and ownership should transfer to Zafar's heirs. But the Supreme Court rejected the petition. Over 150 years passed without legal challenge, making the gap too vast to bridge. Furthermore, the Indian government maintains strict control over the Red Fort, protecting it under the Archaeological Survey of India as a national heritage site. The property is legally unclaimable by any private individual. The lawsuit failed to secure the fort or return the family's wealth, but it did accomplish something else. It functioned as a massive distress flare, forcing the public to acknowledge that this family actually exists. Sultana Begum is the most visible face of this legacy, but she is part of a scattered diaspora. Across Hyderabad, Aurangabad, and Bhopal, dozens of others claim this same lineage, often living in similar obscurity on the margins of modern India. The government and private trusts spend massive amounts of money and labor preserving the stone arches and garden walls built by these historical figures, yet the actual people carrying their lineage receive almost no institutional support. They exist as living artifacts. They hold deep historical significance, but are left to figure out their own survival in a modern economy that has no place for them. History shows us that empires inevitably fall. The rulers lose their titles, the borders are redrawn, and the survivors are left with nothing but the rubble of their ancestors' decisions. We spent a lot of time judging history, deciding who was a tyrant and who was a visionary. But the people left behind by those shifting powers are still human beings, navigating the present day. And regardless of what their ancestors did centuries ago, they deserve basic dignity today.